Okay, so I think now we're going to have a little extra discussion. Earlier this week, Chicago Northwestern's student newspaper released an editorial in which they condemned themselves for supposedly being unfair in their coverage of a visit by Jeff Sessions. And now certain members of the Northwestern student community are suggesting that they went too far in apologizing because they seem to put the emotion of certain students who were offended by that trip in front of the interest to be prudent journalists. So we're going to have a little discussion with some of the most prudent journalists in the world here. And let us start with Mr. Pulitzer, Clarence Page.
Well, Mr. Former Northwestern teacher, I was a part-time adjunct there many, many moons ago, back in the typewriter era. But anyway, excellent school. And I'm also a veteran of high school and university student newspaper journalism. This is a wonderful teachable moment here because one thing that these youngsters, and they are a bright bunch, need to learn, of course, is that we as journalists want to be fair, but we don't have to go out of our way to try to be apologetic or balance out. One of the controversies here was that they went to the people who were being protested, or rather, they quoted people who were protesting, and they were told later that was an invasion of their privacy or something like that, and all of which is contrary to normal journalism principles.
Yeah. Well, one of the students called it trauma porn.
There you go.
Because some of the photos were put up on the Facebook pages or wherever they put them on of the reporters. Look, these journalists were doing their job. It was a speech. There was a protest. They covered both things. They contacted students using a campus directory. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But subsequently, when they got the protest, there are some underlying racial issues. The editor of the paper is an African American. Some of the students who were most out front were African Americans, and they were worried about reprisal from the university. And so the school editor wrote a very compelling apology, which really went too far. I mean, he was doing his job. So I think everybody's kind of learned something from this experience, but journalists record what's happening, and sometimes we record people who are at moments of trauma and grief, and if people are there willingly, publicly, and they don't say, "Don't use my name," that's how
It
reports.
works.
That's
Yeah.
how it works.
Yeah. Good,
Let me
good
speak
comment.
as a graduate of the Columbia Graduate School of Journalism in New York, which is somewhat superior to the Medill School, I think, isn't it?
Marginally.
All right.
Medill's a great school. But let me say this. What you've got here is a conflict between people, what is their self-identity? If you are a reporter first and you're an objective journalist, and that's what you want to do, then you report and cover it and photograph it if people don't like it, if even your friends don't like it. But if you're a part of a cause, and obviously many of these kids protesting were part of a cause, if that's a higher matter in your hierarchy of values and beliefs, then you're going to say, look, being a reporter is fine, but it's subordinate to this. All the things we've been discussing, the First Amendment, freedom of the press, free speech. Are there exceptions to that? We used fighting words we argued about. And what they're arguing about, let's take the African-American racial causes. Let's take a white supremacist. Should you quote him directly if he's got a real funny statements and things like that in a publication where that will be hated? Or do you ignore that, say, I'm not giving that guy any space?
So you're taking this sort of approach of Kant and higher values.
But see, I'm a journalist, but I'm an editorial writer, and I admit that I've got biases, and they're there. But when I went out and reported, I reported on a Klansman. He didn't like the story I wrote. I mean, he liked the story that was straight, but the editorial I wrote, he detested.
Yeah.
So you can write a straight thing, but there's no doubt about it. We all carry
Let's
these
have
biases.
Carrie in the
Well,
room.
I am a journalism graduate. I'm going to trump both you guys of Brigham Young University. So there, the finest out west. And in fact, I just reported about a study showing about the disparity between people from the Midwest and the South, how they're proportionately represented in the U.S. workforce versus the industry of journalism. There is a Northeastern and LA West Coast bias. There is such few representation of people from the South and the Midwest. And this, I think, was a very sad instance of Midwest journalism failure. It was completely just humiliating as a journalist that they had to issue this apology. I don't think that student protesters should feel that they're traumatized because they were covered for covering a protest. And if you want to talk about reprisal from administrators, it's conservative students who are the ones who far more often face reprisal from university administrators. So I think they're whining and complaining. Absolutely, I can show you lots of statistics, and there are lots of organizations like Campus Reform. Yes, no, it was just the world is a real place, and we're creating journalism students who live in a bubble. This is a sham. I mean, the fact that so many students are graduating with enormous debt burdens for this type of education, I think is a sad state on journalism.
You did see it corrected. You did see it corrected right away. That's why we're talking about it now, because just common sense, whether you're J major or not, you should know that this kind of journalism is the responsible way to do it, and not to be apologetic about it.
Yeah, they were doing their job, but there were some tensions underneath, and I think it's sorted out, and everybody learned something. I just want to talk about something that's happening today, and that's all these emails that Stephen Miller, who is the president's top domestic advisor, have surfaced, and that he has sent and published and sent to Breitbart, which clearly exposes him as a quite determined white supremacist. I think.
Should we burn him at the stake?
No, we shouldn't burn him at the stake, but do we want the taxpayers paying his salary in the White House?
Look, who decides this? The President of the United States brings people in, and there's no doubt about it. You take some of these groups that call people names, they've called me names, they call all my friends names, all of which are untrue, and nobody tries to answer them now. But look, this thing, Stephen Miller is one of the most effective aides to the President of the United States. I don't know that I saw anything that he wrote that was so outrageous that you would say, let's take this guy and take away his job. I mean, this censorship that is going on that you've alluded to or you've addressed, I think it's exactly right. It's going on in this country.
Well, and if you want to talk about immigration, specifically for African Americans, for example, under the Barack Obama administration, the U.S. Civil Rights Commission issued a report looking at the effects of illegal immigration and how it hurt lower educated or high school dropout African American men. There is a huge negative employment effect because of illegal immigration. So when you have someone like Stephen Miller who is actually standing up for U.S. citizens and he's called a white supremacist, this is the problem with the discourse in this country. And I'm the national editor for Accuracy in Media. We just celebrated our 50th anniversary. I know you were friends with Reed Irvine, its founder. We had Dr. Ben Carson at our gala. We gave him an award for a lifetime of fighting fake news. And it was because, and one of the great lines he said was that the only thing worse to the media than Satan is a black conservative, because people like us, because we are Caucasian, we can be called all sorts of names in the book, but thank God for people like Ben Carson who are pushing against the lies and standing up for
I think we ought to protect black conservatives because they're so rare and they're so endangered. And the black conservatives,
well, we have
know.
show Michael. We have some good, thought leaders.
Exactly. No. Black conservatives are not an oppressed group. Some of them are friends of mine, and some of my best friends. But the fact of the matter is that there's victimization is contagious, shall we say? I mean, the whole idea that we have an oppressed class of conservatives who just can't get their word out. I see wall-to-wall radio. Look at all the media that they've got.
Let me ask you a question. Wait, Clarence. One pushback there might be your namesake Clarence Thomas, who I forget the name, a liberal journalist though this week tweeted a quite aggressive message and Tim Carney, my boss, said, would this ever be said by a liberal journalist or a conservative journalist if it was a black liberal jurist? He's
still Supreme Court justice. He's a Supreme Court justice.
25 years.
That's not exactly a weak position without a voice.
And he can get even who holds in this society cultural power?
Okay.
The ability basically to ostracize and make pariahs out of people. It is basically the left in America, whether it's in the universities or the media or schools, and the conservatives are by and large, the ones that would get these beatings regularly. And I
I've
really-
noticed Fox News does a pretty good job beating up people on,
Yeah,
on
but
the
Fox
left.
News
Wait, let her
does-
finish. I'll come
We
back
can
to you.
handle it. We can handle it, and you guys ought to be able
But
to
why
handle
are
it.
you
You're
trying-
in power. You have the White House.
Why
you
are you
have the
trying to
Senate.
get-
You have the Supreme Court.
Why are you
what
trying
are you
to get?
griping about?
Why are you trying to get Mr. Miller fired?
Because I don't like him on taxpayer dime, spreading
Carrie.
ideas
Who told
that
you he
are
did?
anathema to many
Carrie.
people.
Carrie.
Fox News is a drop in the bucket relative to the massive infrastructure of media, whether it's the Washington Post, the New York Times, ABC News, CBS News, CNN, that is vastly leftward.
Let's have a round robin here to finish it off very quickly. So yes or no? You are the editor-in-chief of the best paper in the country. Don't name it, pick it in your mind. Do you publish the name of the whistleblower? Yes or no?
Yeah, at this point, I think you do. Yes.
Okay.
No,
No, Eleanor says.
no.
Yes.
Yes.
No, the only way that law can be effective is for you to preserve anonymity. That's part of the protection.
So why?
You publish the name of the whistleblower, and you put a chilling effect on. There will be no more whistleblowers.
From what we know
which
about him,
is
he
the
ought to have a
purpose
chilling effect.
of why they want it out.
But see, there is and I take both sides here, but there is remember with the New York Times a couple of years ago published the name, the CIA's lead on Iran, who was an undercover officer. So it's interesting how, Eleanor's point, I guess, is that whistleblowers need to be protected for that specific exigent point.
And the law protects them.
I think the word whistleblower is too strong in this case. I would argue this is a partisan operative who had an agenda.
Okay. Well,
And
that was a wonderful discussion.
how would you
and
know
we
that?
will leave it. We will leave
Deep
it.
Throat was a part.
I think we will leave it. We will leave it there. We will leave it there.
Yeah. Amen.